I grew up in a family which always had animals. We always had dogs, we always had cats. As a child, our family was the one that everyone bought the bird with a broken wing or the stray litter of kittens that had been found abandoned in the park, that kind of family. That was who we were. So I grew up being confident around animals, but also having an enormous amount of respect for them and understanding how much work they needed, how much time they needed, and a family really wasn't a family without animals. My first dog was a collie cross called Charlie, who was an escapologist, an obsessive ball chaser and bike chaser and anything on wheels chaser. And he lived until he was nearly 15 years old. We've always had cats or a cat in various different permutations and numbers. After Charlie died, we decided to have a period of time where we wouldn't have a permanent dog, and we carried on fostering during that time, which was lovely because it meant we had a dog around, but at the same time my garden recovered a little, and we just went through a period of time where we had a little bit more freedom to be able to go to places that we wouldn't be able to go with the dog, which we enjoyed. And then I got a very unexpected phone call from a very upset lady called Rachel saying that she had to move Worzel that day. And I just said to her, "He comes here." Those were the exact words I said. I just said, "He comes here." And those 3 words probably changed my life completely. When I first went to university, which feels like several million years ago, I edited my college newspaper, and I wanted to look at having a career as a journalist, and did quite a lot of writing and started to develop some kind of skills as a writer, which I didn't really have when I was a child or a teenager. I was a musician, really. But I got interested in the whole process of running a newspaper and that kind of thing when I was at university. And then unexpectedly had a child. So that kind of put the kibosh on that. I trained as a teacher. And I actually, because I worked in a small village school, I ended up becoming the literacy specialist because there was simply too many subjects and not enough teachers, which I also enjoyed very much. And one of the things that used to frustrate me so much about children is that they wanted to write, but they were inhibited by their spelling or their handwriting or those kinds of things. So you'd have a child with the most fantastic imagination who had an enormous amount to say, who refused point blank to put anything on paper because they didn't know how to spell all the words correctly. And I suspect that there's a small amount of that which I've remembered when I was writing as Worzel, that actually it doesn't matter how you spell it, it doesn't matter what your handwriting looks like. The important thing is if you've got an idea and you want to share it, just get it down on paper. So I suspect there's a tiny smidgen of that which has remained in the way that Worzel talks. I started writing Worzel's blog really as a way of keeping his previous owners updated with everything that was going on in his life. They hadn't wanted to have to rehome him. It was a decision which they found incredibly difficult. And I didn't want to just sort of whisk him away and leave them with no updates or no information about him. So I started the Facebook page really to keep them updated on how he was doing. And then after a while, I started to really enjoy myself. And I started to enjoy the process of thinking and imagining what he was thinking was going on in his world, and how that might sound and feel if I actually put it into English. And how some things that we say we assume we know exactly what they mean because we're so used to hearing the words. But imagine if you'd never heard the word before. And what would that sound like and what would that feel like to somebody who'd never heard it before, but you expect them to understand what it is that you're saying. And I just started having enormous fun with the words. And then he developed his voice, and his voice became very much him, and it wasn't my voice, and I was really happy about that. I just finished in a pantomime, and anybody who's worked on a major project will know that you reach the end of a big project and you suddenly get this feeling of, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And this huge sense of nothingness in front of you. And to get me through the end of the pantomime, which I'd been really involved in, I was saying to myself, right, when I finish the pantomime, I'm going to write Worzel's book. And because I'd been going like the absolute clappers when I was doing the pantomime, I just actually kept up that level of impetus into the book. And the first thing I did was I took everything from Worzel's blog originally and just pulled it all out to see what I had. And then it was just a question of going through my own diary, going through my own social media posts and all that kind of thing, just finding anything that I'd written during that year, put it all together, started slotting it together, and then just found I had a structure, found I had something which flowed and worked and became a coherent story. So that's how it came together. As far as I was concerned, that was absolutely fundamental of what I wanted to do. I think far too often we assume that we are happening to the dog and that we are the centre of their world, and everything that we do has a direct impact on the dog, which it does, but not always in the way that we think it's going to. So, for example, we might open a door. There's a classic example. I think I open a door, and when I open a door, I automatically make sure I walk through the door first. Now, a lot of people would say that I'm walking through the door first to make sure that the person on the other side of the door isn't going to be squashed by my dog coming through all enthusiastic. That's not true. That's not why I do it. I do it to make sure that my dog is protected from whatever it is on the other side of the door, because I know that he feels insecure, and I know that he might be worried about what's on the other side of the door. Now, if you start thinking about that from the point of view of dog, yeah, he understands that there's something that I'm protecting him. So he will get the idea that mum always goes through the door to make sure I'm safe, which is what I do. But the human interpretation of that might be about, well, I'm making sure the humans are safe. It's not true. I'm making sure my dog's safe. This has got nothing to do with that daft dominance thing. This isn't about me being in charge walking through the door. It's about me making sure that my dog is safe and feels confident and protected by me. And that is my number one job, as far as I'm concerned, as Worzel's mum, is that I keep him safe and that he feels that I will look after him and protect him the whole time. Dominance is daft. Patience. Don't expect to understand anything or everything at the same time, and don't expect the same thing which caused a problem today to cause a problem tomorrow, and don't assume that the thing that they were absolutely fine with yesterday is going to be okay today, because it's not. All rescue dogs are different, and all rescue dogs have different challenges and different demands. They're as different as any dog in any situation, but they do have one common theme, and that is that at some point in their life something has gone wrong, and you may not know the full impact of what that is. Some dogs recover from that negative thing that's happened better than others. You can't always know what that thing is. And you can't necessarily always predict what the impact that's going to have on your dog. So watch your dog, learn from your dog. Listen isn't the right word, but concentrate and watch what your dog is doing. Observe, see what they're doing. If you do that, then you start to get a really strong understanding of what's going through their mind. And then from that, for me, it was only a very, very small step to having gone through that process and tried to understand what's going on in my dog's mind, to be able to put it on paper and to understand how that might be interesting to other people. One of the reasons that I wrote the book is because my daughter became incredibly unwell in April and May of the year that I wrote it. And I was going out of my mind with worry, to be perfectly honest with you. And I needed something to distract myself. And to start off, it was something that made me feel better and happy. And then it became something that helped me concentrate on something else. And it actually allowed me to put aside the worries and the anxieties. They never went, but it was a really good opportunity for me to say, right here, right now, I am going to be someone completely different. I am not going to be that anxious mother. I am going to be Worzel. And the process of doing that helped me cope much better with my daughter being unwell. And it became a kind of therapy in its own right. In terms of problems that Worzel's had, well, I wouldn't say he's had any problems that aren't normal either sighthound behaviour or to be expected from a rescue dog. So he has to bond with us, he has to learn to understand the routine of the family, to find his place within the house, that kind of thing. The problems we've had with Worzel have mainly been due to the fact that he's enormous, and he doesn't think he is. He doesn't think he's nearly as big as he actually is. So we have like most people do, a normal double bed, which is fine for two people. Unfortunately, Worzel thinks it's absolutely fine for two adults and him. And I have to say that when Worzel stretches out and sticks his back legs behind you, he can stretch from the headboard right the way to the end of the bed with his toes sticking off the end. And he likes to sleep upside down, and then he sort of flumps over on top of people. So yes, he's enormous, and he thinks he's sharing my bed for the rest of his life, which is fine during the winter because he's warm. During the summer, I'm afraid I do shut the door because I'm never going to get any sleep. Did you want any more on that? Worzel came from Hounds First Sighthound Rescue. In actual fact, Worzel was the founder of Hounds First Sighthound Rescue's dog, which is why it was quite awkward and quite difficult for everybody, because basically founders of rescues don't generally rehome their dogs, but she had very, very good reason for doing it, and it had to happen. So one of the things that I hoped to achieve with writing the book about Worzel was to be able to raise funds for Hounds First Sighthound Rescue, because they rescued Worzel, but when my daughter was so unbelievably unwell, Worzel kind of rescued me because I was really struggling. So it's a way of squaring the circle and saying thank you to them for letting me have Worzel and trusting me with Worzel, but giving me something to do which has really quite changed my life. And you know, it's lovely to be able to give back to the organisation where Worzel originally came from. On top of that, Hounds First are really very good in terms of matching dogs to people, in ensuring that the support and the backup and the follow-up work with rescue dogs is there and available for anybody who adopts a dog from them. And although they're a relatively new rescue, the way that they set themselves up is with the highest possible ethics, and to ensure that every dog that goes through their organisation is safe, loved, happy, and so are the families that they go to. Worzel has a Facebook page, so if you want to find out what's going on with Worzel on a day-to-day basis, go onto Facebook, type in Worzel the Lurcher, and you will find him. He's a big yellow dog, you can't miss him. And we keep that updated a lot, and there's lots of photos, there's lots of stuff that's happening just on a day-to-day basis on there, and it's great fun. And that's basically where we live in terms of interacting with the world, so that's a great place to go. We've also started doing a newspaper column for the Lowestoft Journal, which I love doing. If anybody had told me a year ago that I would be writing non-existent words in a newspaper, then I would have laughed my head off. And the fact that they've embraced it and that they enjoy it and that they think it's valuable is just fantastic. I'm working on two things at the moment. The first thing I'm working on is hopefully what's going to become a series of children's books where Worzel is the central character. He will be speaking proper English in these for the benefit of the parents and the children who might appreciate it being a little bit less complicated. And these are going to be a series of really positive books about understanding the way children, dogs, animals interact with each other, and building on the whole concept of respect and understanding, which I think Worzel is in a really, really strong position to help the rest of the world understand. And yes, there is going to be a second Worzel book, in very much, I hope, in the style of the one that we've got at the moment, but just more adventures, and Worzel is a teenager now. So you can only imagine.